This is my life. This is my passion. This is Ike's Outdoors.
Hey guys, Ike here from IkesOutdoors.com. This video is the second video in our Project Lindsay series. We're trying to bang these out quick because season's getting close, but Hurricane Isaac has kind of delayed us with some much needed rain, so it's kind of finally stopped raining and we're able to get out here. And in this video we're going to talk about Lindsay's setup and really get more into the bow tuning aspect of it and kind of what she needs to do to be able to go out and hunt with this bow. The bow she's shooting is an Assassin SD, and her setup is she's shooting a 23.5 inch draw, which is a lot shorter than what I thought it was originally, and she's shooting 35 pounds. Now that's about as much as she can pull. I'd like to get her up to 40, but she can comfortably pull 35 repetitively, so that's what we're going to keep her at. Her arrow weight is 348 grains, and her arrow speed is 195 feet per second. And now this doesn't sound like a whole lot, you know, 195 feet per second with that arrow weight is putting out 29 foot-pounds of kinetic energy, which on the scale for kinetic energy and penetration is going to be right on the bottom side of what you need for whitetails. And antelope and small game like that, you know. The range on that's 25 to 41 pounds of kinetic energy that you need to kill a whitetail. So she's right at the bottom side of that. And but I'm not real worried about it because I've killed deer with recurves. I killed my first 3 deer with a 45-pound recurve that was not much bigger than, or not putting out much more kinetic energy than what she did. So the important thing is shot placement. We're going to discuss that in a future video. So the first thing we're going to do, and what we're going to do in this video, is really talk about tuning this bow and trying to get as much speed and kinetic energy out of it as possible. If you look this bow up in a calculator and put in all the specs that we've got, this bow should only be shooting about 165 feet per second, but because of the tuning that I've done on it, we've actually bumped that up to 195. So, and we're hoping to get a little bit more tuning out of this, or a little more speed out of this tuning today. What we're going to cover is we're going to walk back tune, and we're going to broadhead tune, and that's going to get this bow not only putting our broadheads exactly where our field points are shooting, but it's also going to put us exactly where we need to be as far as tuning goes. This bow is going to be really finely tuned and really ready to hit the woods. So we're going to talk about real quick is Lindsay's arrow setup here, and what she's shooting is a 500 spine arrow, and this is going to be a little bit of information for you guys on these arrows. Like I said, she's shooting a 23.5 inch draw, and we went with a 500 spine arrow mainly because it's the easiest arrow for us to get. She should probably be shooting either a 16-16 aluminum, 17-16 aluminum, or 600 spine arrows, carbon arrows. But they're hard to find, and they're really narrow on how you can tune them, and it really makes it tough to tune them. So what I've done, and what you guys can do, is you can play with your arrow. You can really mess with the arrow and get it to flex right. 500 spine is too heavy for Lindsay's setup. It's too stiff. And the spines work, the bigger the number, the weaker the spine. And spine is all about how this arrow flexes. When this arrow comes out, it's going to flex. It's called Archer's Paradox. And then it's going to stabilize. If it's too weak, it's going to come out and it's going to continue to flex for too long, and you're going to lose energy. If it's not weak enough, or if it's too stout, it's going to come out and it's not going to have that Archer's Paradox at all, and you're going to lose energy and speed there as well. So what we've done to get her arrow to flex properly is we went with a stiffer arrow shaft, and what I've done is I've made it actually a couple inches too long. This arrow, and I'm throwing a lot of information at you guys, I'm sorry, you may have to watch the video over a couple times, but I'm just going to try to explain it the best I can. What I've done is we went with the 500 spine arrow, and instead of making this thing 23 inches long, 23 and a quarter, like I normally would. My arrow is, I shoot 27 and a half, and my arrow length is 26 and a quarter. So to make mine a little stiffer, to make hers a little, to make hers flex a little bit more and a little bit weaker, I've actually went and I've added a couple inches to it. Her draw length is 23 and a half, and we're shooting a 25-inch arrow. And what that does is, if you guys know anything about, I don't know if it's physics or what, but the shorter something is, the stiffer it is. The longer it is, the weaker it's going to be. So we've added a couple inches to it to make this arrow a little bit weaker. The other thing I've done is, instead of going with a lightweight field point, which I see a lot of guys doing with their wives and their kids, I've went with 125 grain field point. And what this is going to do is, it's going to have, you got more weight on this end. It's going to allow this arrow to flex more. So if I need this arrow to flex more, I add more weight. If I need this arrow to flex less, then I take my weight down. And I see that a lot of times in guys who are shooting 75 grain tips on their kids' arrows, and you really don't need to, unless your arrow's set up that way. So we've got that on there we've added a couple inches to our arrow to increase our flex, to weaken our spine, and we've also added a little bit more weight out on the front to make this a little bit more flex into it as well. Another advantage of adding 125 grain tip to this is, unlike 75 grain broadheads, where you've got that small cutting diameter, usually less than an inch, we now have a cutting diameter of over an inch with the broadheads that we've selected. So you got a bigger broadhead, you've got your arrow flexing properly, and it's really going to tune out better this way. Now, that may not be what you need to do, but if your arrow is too stiff, you can add length to it, and you can add more weight to the end. If your arrow is too weak, you can shorten your arrow and you can add less weight on your field point. So I kind of rambled on there and kind of went into a lot of depth on that, but I hope that explains to you how to set your arrow up and how to get it to flex properly. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to start tuning this bow, and we're going to walk back tune this bow. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to walk back tune this bow.
Okay. What exactly do we need to do for walk back tuning?
What walk back tuning is going to do is, it's going to set your rest up. Any bow technician out there, I don't care how good they are, may not get your rest perfectly centered. So what this is going to do is, this actually, we're not tuning the bow here, we're tuning our setup. And what this is going to do is, it's going to get your rest perfectly centered. It's not going to mess with your elevation, it's going to get that rest perfectly centered. So what I want you to do is, I want you to take, using your 20-yard pin and your 20-yard pin only, I want you to shoot down there at that hips target, and I want you to aim for the top dot. And we'll film this as we go. And I want you to take your 20-yard pin, and I want you to shoot that top dot. See the 3 dots that are right in the middle?
Yes.
I want you to shoot that top dot.
With my 20-yard pin.
With your 20-yard pin.
Okay.
And then we're going to move back to 25 yards. And at 25 yards, I want you to shoot that top dot again, but I want you to use your 20-yard pin. Okay. And what that's going to do is, your arrow should fall down. So then we're going to move back to 30 yards, and I want you to do the same thing. 20-yard pin, top target, top dot. And what this should do is, this hips target's great because it's got three dots right in a row. And what those arrows should do is, if you shoot perfect and the bow's sighted in perfect, you should hit dead center on the 20-yard pin, or the 20-yard dot, dead center below it on 25, dead center below it on 30. You should have a perfectly straight line. If your rest is out of center, the further back you get, the further off that arrow is going to get, and you're going to start drifting one way or another. And the way you correct that is actually bring your rest back toward the center. So if you're shooting to the left, bring your rest back to the center. Bring it to the right. If you're shooting to the right, bring your rest back to the left. And this is really going to improve the accuracy of your bow at long distances, and it's going to improve the speed and kinetic energy, the overall tuning of your bow. Okay, so here's the results from Lindsay's walk back tuning. What we did, because Lindsay's effective range is only about 25 yards, I actually had her move up to 10, and we did 10, 15, and 20 yards. So it's not exactly the way you should do it, but it's what we did for Lindsay, and it ended up showing that she's shooting off to the left the further back she gets. So what we're going to do is, we're going to take her rest here, and we're going to move it to the right. Her shooting off to the left with this shows me that her rest is out of center to the left. So when we're doing this, when you're tuning this rest like this, you want to move this thing in very, very little increments. And the closer you get to your center shot, getting all them arrows to fall in a line, the less you want to move it. So she's pretty far off right now, so I'm going to move this thing about a 1/16 of an inch. And in tuning, that 1/16 of an inch is a pretty big move. So we're going to do this. So we move this a 1/16 of an inch, and I'm going to tighten this up into place. And we're going to do the exact same thing again. Round 2 of our walkback tuning. Hey, so we're in the midst of walkback tuning this bow, and we heard something weird on the last shot. And we came up here and pulled the arrow out, and Lindsay flexed the arrow, and I heard it crack. And I grabbed the arrow and I flexed it more, and it actually broke. So they recommend that you flex these arrows before each shot, and this is why. If this arrow would have came out of a more powerful bow, if it would have came out of my bow, you can see where it would have broke. It would have broke right there, and when that comes from up here, it's going to break, and it's going to go right there into your hand. So we got real lucky with this one that we were not shooting a more powerful bow, and it actually held up to the shot. So whenever you get your arrows, before you shoot them each time, especially if you're shooting groups, and I don't recommend shooting groups at the same target, because you hit these walls, makes that wall weak, and then it's apt to do that right there. So before you flex these bow or shoot these arrows, just give them a flex. Just hold it just like that with your thumbs and give it a little flex. I mean, these are tough arrows. They're not going to break, and if you can't flex it that far without hearing it creak and crack, then it needs to be replaced. That should be the way it should work, just like that. So, and these aren't like aluminums, they'll go right back to their original straightness. So that's just a little safety caution for all you guys out there, because these can break and these can end up in your hand. Okay, so here's our results after doing a little bit of tuning. We've got a nice center line there. And the nice thing about doing walkback tuning is Lindsay doesn't have to shoot this bow. I actually ended up doing the shooting here toward the end, and I was able to get her bow walkback tuned pretty effectively. We moved it once and I got it pretty close, but I moved it a little too far, so I had it out to the right. So I moved my rest back to the left, and now we've got a nice good center line going here. And we've got Lindsay's bow walkback tuned. She's got a nice good center shot on her arrows. And the next step in this process is to broadhead tune this bow. And we'll run through the broadhead tuning as well. And again, with the broadhead tuning, unlike paper tuning, I can broadhead tune Lindsay's bow for her. So I'll probably end up doing that just to make the process a little bit quicker and to really cover this thing a little bit better. So. Okay, so we've got our bow walkback tuned, we've got our rest perfectly centered, we suppose. The next process in this is broadhead tuning. And what Lindsay's shooting, what I've got her going to shoot this year is a red feather.
Phoenix.
No.
No?
Razor Hawk. And this is a 2-blade version. And the reason we went with this is because it's got a cut-on contact head. I don't like expandables for low weight or low kinetic energy because they take some power away, because they have to have some power to actually open that blade. And I don't like a muzzy or something with that type of tip on it, because that actually will go into the skin, and when the skin gets tight, it'll actually punch through rather than cut through. These they have a wedge point on them, and they cut on contact like the name describes. So you get a deeper penetration and a better cut with a lower poundage bow. So this is what a lot of guys shoot out of recurves, and that's the reason why they shoot them, so they can get that better, a little bit more penetration, a little bit better cut on there. And we went with the 125 grain to get her arrow to flex properly and to get that extra cutting diameter. If you can see, unlike the 75 grain, she's got about 1 1 3/16 cutting diameter with this broadhead. And it's a good tough broadhead. So what we're going to do here to walkback tune this bow is we've got it sighted in, broadhead tune this bow, is we've got the bow sighted in, we've got it walkback tuned. And I see this all the time is guys will put their field point or broadheads on, and they'll actually just move their sights to where their broadheads are, and they'll sight it in with their broadhead. And that's not really correct, because what happens is a field point you can make a field point go where you want it to go by moving your sight. A broadhead is going to go where it's pointed. So for instance, a field point, if it's pointed directly at this camera, I can adjust my sights and I can make it shoot over here, or I can make it shoot over here. With a broadhead, if it's pointed directly at the camera, I can adjust my sights all I want to, and it's going to go where it's pointed. So what you end up doing is you end up just moving your sights to point your bow to where you want it to hit. You're not actually getting the broadhead to hit where it's supposed to hit. You're getting the bow to make it hit where it's supposed to hit, or where you want it to hit, if I'm explaining that properly. So to broadhead tune this bow, it's going to really fine tune our rest, and it's really going to fine tune our elevation. We should get the exact same point of impact with this broadhead that we get with our field point. So Lindsay, you want to shoot this? You can do this from 10 yards, you can do this from 20 yards, you can do it from 30 yards, it don't matter, whatever your most comfort range is, and for Lindsay it's 10 yards. So I'm going to have her shoot it at probably about 15 yards, just so we can get a good, feel for how this bow's actually shooting with the broadhead. With broadhead tuning, you're not going to have to do anything special. All you're going to have to do is shoot your bow like normal and aim for the center of that target. Alright, so you can see here that Lindsay's is shooting just a little bit to the right of center, and that shows me that her rest is actually off to the right, so I need to move her rest to the left a little bit. Now, if she was shooting a little bit closer, she would have got here inside what's left of this ring. I probably wouldn't have moved it at all. If I can get within 3 to 4 inches of hitting what she wants to, then I'm probably going to leave it alone, because human error, you're not going to make a perfect shot every time if you're, like me or like Lindsay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move her rest to the left, and this is even more minute adjustment than when you're walkback tuning. We've now gone from moving it a 16th to 32nd to maybe a 16th. Just the slightest little movement on that rest is going to make a huge difference in the point of impact of her broadhead. And the reason I didn't have her shoot a field point is I know that this bow's sighted in. So we know the bow's sighted in, we know she can hit dead center of this target with the bow, so there's no point in having her shoot a field point. And when you're shooting a broadhead, you should really only shoot one arrow anyway, because if she shoots a field point in here, then she shoots her broadhead, she's going to damage, if she hits close enough, she's going to damage her arrow. So that's the reason I only had her shoot one arrow at this time. Alright, so after just a little bit of adjustment to this bow, to the rest, we've got it now shooting what I would consider close enough to center. I mean, she's hitting in a space less than the size of a deer's heart. So she can do that with her broadheads. We now have her broadheads and her field point shooting at the same point of impact, and I'm pretty happy that the bow is finally tuned to the point where she can go hunt. Alright, so we've got her bow walkback tuned, we've got her bow broadhead tuned. Do you have any questions about the process, about what we've done?
No, seems pretty straightforward on the tuning aspect of it. I mean, you want your bow to be as accurate as possible, especially us low-pounded shooters. Accuracy is critical. Kinetic energy is critical for us.
And we're going to talk about accuracy and shot placement in the next video.
Yeah. So, I mean, you need to do everything you need to do to get your bow shooting as accurately as possible, because for us, every inch counts.
And that's it. For me, we've done shot placement videos in the past, me and T-Mac when he was with us. And I said in that video, for me, shooting a 70-pound bow, shot placement is not as critical as far as avoiding the bone, and really getting that bow fine-tuned is something that I do, but something most archers don't really need to do, because you're shooting 70 pounds, you're shooting a heavy bow. Generally, if you can put it in, we've got an ugly target here, but if I can hit that foam with an arrow on a deer, I'm generally going to kill it. Lindsay's, we've done this not only to improve her bow's tuning, but to also improve her accuracy overall, and to improve the efficiency of this bow. And that's what it's all about, is get this bow to be shooting as efficient as possible. So we've covered walkback tuning, we've covered broadhead tuning, and I know it's got a little bit complicated, and we just basically scratched the surface on the tuning. For more information on this, you can go to our website in the tuning section.
Yes, it's in the bow tuning basics section of the website. And
you can download there what we have as a PDF file, and you can download that to your computer. I actually have it on my Kindle, so I have it readily accessible at all times when I'm tuning other people's bows. And this PDF file's got flashcards in it, and it's going to tell you what you need to do. It's going to show you the basics of walkback tuning, broadhead tuning, and paper tuning. And we didn't paper tune because I just don't put much stock in paper tuning. but it does have everything you need to know about walkback tuning. If you're hitting to the right, what you need to do, hitting to the left, what you need to do. Broadhead tuning, as far as your elevation, your up and down, your left and right, what you need to do, the 3 steps you need to do to tune your bow are all covered in that PDF file. So if you go to ikesoutdoors.com, hit the tuning page, you'll see it up on the top left-hand corner. You can just download that PDF file, and it'll really help you explain this better, and it'll give you a nice visual aid. You can print these things out and laminate them, and you can have them with you at all times. And this is something that I think everybody should do. You know, we do this with Lindsay's bow to get her to be more efficient, but there's something about a finely tuned bow that just makes me feel good. I really get a kick out of getting my bow shooting perfect, and doing that to other people's bows as well. But it's not only going to make you more accurate, it's also going to make you more efficient, and efficiency and accuracy are what it's all about when it comes to killing deer. And as deer hunters, we want to kill that deer
ethically.
I want to shoot that deer, and I want to watch that deer go down, whether it's a doe or a big buck or whatever animal I'm hunting. I want to watch that thing die within 50-60 yards of my stand. And that's why we're doing this, is to get Lindsay to be able to shoot an animal and kill it efficiently and ethically. So this has been part 2 of Project Lindsay. You can check out part 1 on YouTube and on our website, ikesoutdoors.com. And part 3 is going to be all about shot placement, so you can check that out as well. Here, we'll follow this video up probably in a couple days.